welcome back, everybody. And today I'm going to be ranking the best decks in the rotation format here. We have had a good amount of time looking at City League results, but also the Champions League fukouka just concluded, which we saw 7,000 people compete in, and we saw a pretty interesting meta share. What did well in the tournament was also pretty crazy to see, and I thought I would rank what I think are the best decks going into the format right now, and I'll just kind of talk about like what I would personally pick. Like I'm going to rank these based on what I would play to a tournament. If I was going to a post-station tournament tomorrow, what decks I would expect to be the best, the most popular, and what I would play to the tournament myself. I'm interested to see kind of what the format is going to look like, because obviously we've had Champions Leagues in the past in the new format, and it's like the results were kind of skewed. I mean, we saw Feraligatr win a tournament, and Feraligatr never ended up becoming a meta deck, and we'll see if these results can carry over into our next format nonetheless. But I want to rank each deck and kind of look at them. Starting off with Mega Starmie, which definitely feels like a good deck, but it feels like maybe a worse version of something like a Marnie's Grimmsnarl deck. It's a deck that tries to use Frostlass and put on a lot of early game pressure with Starmie's attack that can spread damage. But Starmie definitely flopped. I mean, when it first came out with Perfect Order and we had rotation, at first it was doing really good in all the City Leagues. It was winning a lot of them. It was the most played deck in most of these tournaments. Flash forward a couple weeks later, the deck has evaporated and no one really plays it anymore. It didn't have any good results at fukouka. It didn't make top 16. I don't know if it was even played on stream or anything. I'm not sure the Mega Starmie deck has the legs. Sadly, this might be a C tier deck. I think that the deck could be B tier. Like, the idea of this, water toolbox Mega Starmie deck with some spread in the deck with Frostlass Monkey Dory, it doesn't sound bad. But I think one of the common themes right now in the standard format is that Oko is just kind of a big deal right now. Now, there's not really any lightning Pokemon in the format. Seen a lot of play right now. I mean, realistically, the only lightning attacker that I can even see working right now is probably Pikachu. But all these big things like Lucario, Raging Bolt, Alakazam, even sometimes like Teal Mask Ogerpon can just reach these insanely high numbers out of nowhere and just one-shot your Mega Evolutions. It feels like Megas are still good, but it feels like Megas definitely aren't as playable as they were before. I know we did see the Mega Absol deck win fukouka, but a deck like Starmie wouldn't really do as well in this new format if it was in this format. I think it would be a lot better, but I think in this new format, I don't know if Mega Starmie sadly has the legs to be as good, and it has fallen off really hard since its debut in the format, which means that the deck might be mediocre, might have to be a C tier deck. Part of me wants to place it in B tier. I think there is still hope for a deck like this to work in the new format, but I think Grimm might just be a better deck. Starmie doesn't do anything better than Grimm in a lot of regards. It doesn't have a good consistent engine with Spike Myth. It doesn't have that built-in energy acceleration. It does have a really good first attack, and it technically is stronger than Grimm because you can get it out turn 1 with like a Salvatore. You can get it out turn 2 more easily. It's a 3-prizer though, which is a big downside. But Grimm does have more negatives than Starmie in some regards, where Grimm is weak to grass, Starmie is not weak to grass. So I don't know, Starmie probably goes in C tier, but it's definitely a deck that I can feel as a B tier deck. Next up is the deck that won the Champions League, the Mega Absol Teal Mask deck. This pile of a deck might be a top contender in our new format. Now, I'm not going to go out here and say it's the best deck. This is probably just the new age version of Mega Box in our new format. I think Mega Box is going to live on through the spirit of this deck, because it just kind of feels like it's like the new version of Mega Box. So obviously, Mega Box loses Arven, loses Trolley. So could this deck actually compete in the format? Is it a fluke that it won the tournament, or is it actually a legit deck? This might be a real deck. Kind of want to place it in A tier. I mean, it won the whole thing, right? Like, winning a tournament of that size, despite it being best of one, maybe despite, not many people knowing what to play for the tournament because of new stuff, this deck still looks like a top-tier contender. It's just got a lot of options. Mega Absol is still a very powerful card. It does have a few weaknesses, though. Obviously, it's a big basic deck. It feels like this deck doesn't really have a good matchup against, Raging Bolt, or even, honestly, a Mega Lucario deck could give it some problems. But I do think this deck is solid, maybe belongs in A tier as one of the top decks heading into the new format. We'll have to see if this Mega Box deck still can thrive. If not, this might be more of a B tier deck. Again, could be a fluke that it won, but the deck does have a lot of options. It's got a lot of power behind it. It uses Crispin really well. So I don't know. To me, I feel like it's an A or B tier pick, but I definitely think this deck is very powerful. So maybe for now, we'll plop it in B tier. It did win the Champions League, though, so I don't know. Maybe it belongs in A tier. Next up is Alakazam. This is, in my opinion, another B tier deck. I think Alakazam is a very powerful one-prizer deck that doesn't really lose anything with rotation, and if anything, it gets better because no one's playing Iono anymore, which is really good for the deck. No more Iono is very good for Alakazam. Now, there are decks that will play Unfair Stamp. Unfair Stamp is the new best A-Spec. Everyone's playing Stamp right now, but Alakazam can combat that. I saw a really cool list, I think it was played by Diancie, who's playing it with a Genesect. So you can go Genesect, you can slap a tool on it, and then you can deny your opponent the ability to play their Unfair Stamp against you, making the Alakazam deck nearly invincible. As long as no one's teching in Zorosic in their deck, this deck seems pretty good. I think that Alakazam is better than people give it credit for in this new format. I genuinely think it is the strongest one-prizer deck. It's the most consistent one-prize deck because it's got the best draw engine. It just does infinite damage without really any claws, especially if you are to play the Genesect in the deck. It just feels like a very powerful archetype. And it fits that theme of decks just knock stuff out in one hit. This is another deck that can easily knock stuff out in one hit. Like, I imagine Alakazam is going to farm all the Raging Bolts. It's going to farm all of the other big hitters in the format. And you can still play Battle Cage. And again, with the lack of Iono, decks like Dragapult, decks like Grim, even Starmie, they're going to struggle to kind of get damage on your board when you have Battle Cage in play. Alakazam is dangerously close to being a very powerful archetype, in my opinion. I think this deck has room to be a top contender in our new format. I'm going to place it in the high B tier status. I think it's a very solid deck. I like Alakazam a lot. I do think it is the best one-prizer deck, in my opinion. It does have a lot of counters, though. I'm not talking about the supporters like the Zorosics. I'm also talking about the fact that you can beat it by just playing Special Energy, right? There's the new Stone Energy coming out, which I think is a very scary card for this deck. And there's Mist Energy, which we did see in the first place Absol Teal deck. So I definitely think that Alakazam has some uphill battles, but there are enough good resources you can run to counter those cards. Like, if you want to really beat those Mist Energies and those Stone Fight Energies, you can play stuff like the Enhanced Hammer, like the Refine, whatever. Just play those supporters, play the Enhanced... I think that card's still in the format, actually. But either way, just play Enhanced Hammer in your deck. You're beating these Special Energies. I think Kazam's just got to play a high count of energy removal, and I think the deck's pretty solid. Play Genesect, you don't lose to Unfair Stamp as easily. Watchtower is the sketchiest card. Judge Watchtower specifically is the only thing I got to be worried about with Alakazam. But the deck feels very powerful right now, and I think it genuinely could be a top deck in our format. Next up is Diancie Dusknoir. So this deck has a lot of power behind it. It feels like it's a fast deck. It's got a lot of momentum. You have that new Special Energy card that allows you to search out Psychic Pokemon on your bench. You have Dusknoir, and there's no more Klefki in the format, so Psyduck is a little bit more scary for a deck like this, in my opinion. If your opponent techs a Psyduck in their deck, this deck gets collateral pretty hard. But I do think that Diancie Dusknoir is a very powerful deck. I think it has an amazing time against Dragapult because you're a Psychic deck. You have Wonder Patch, you have Mystery Garden, you have the new Psychic Energy. You have a lot of consistency and support behind you, and you get to play Dusknoir. So if you're against a deck that doesn't play a Psyduck in it, you're just going to farm them. So this is another deck I think belongs in the B tier as one of the top dogs in the format because I think it's just a very strong deck. Now, it does have a lot of counters. Again, Psyduck is really bad for this deck because it does rely heavily on Dusknoir. Because at that point, you're just a Diancie Beatstick deck, which isn't terrible because at least you're KOing stuff like the Dragapults and Lucarios. But you are kind of just not able to use as much of the firepower as you want to use. Still, this deck is really strong, and I like it in the B tier status. All right, next up is Flareon. I would place... Okay, this one's kind of weird. I actually think Flareon is a very underrated deck. This is a deck that seems like it doesn't lose much with rotation. You're going to lose stuff like Pidgeot and Counter Catcher for a little bit of extra plays and consistency. But Flareon does seem really good. You also have a lot of variety as to what you want to put in your deck. One of the things I like about Flareon is the multiple evolutions you have access to. You can play Leafeon and Flareon, like we see right now. I think both are really good. Flareon gives you a really strong fire attacker. Playing Leafeon is really good because Leafeon gives you a really good time against those dark Pokemon weak to grass. You can also play something like Espeon EX and Clefairy if you want to counter Lucario and Dragapult. You can play something like the Jolteon EX. If let's say Starmie actually ends up being real, you can play Jolteon in your deck. Now, I have a lightning attacker to beat Starmie. You can play Sylveon still if you want to really lean into the annoying combo of Angelite. So, Flareon, I think, is a very underrated deck. So, this is a deck I would consider bringing to a regional. If there was a regional next week in the new format, I would put Flareon very high on the list of what I would play because the deck is really strong. Yes, it is weak to Watchtower. That's obviously not great, but there's not that many decks that play Watchtower. Like, even if we look at the first place list here, like this one's not playing Watchtower. Like, yeah, Unfair Stamp Watchtower might be a problem for Flareon, but the Flareon deck just has so much type coverage at its disposal. It has really good power behind it with Carnelian. Like, the deck seems really good. You still have Wellspring in the deck, which I quite like. I think it's better than Box. And like I said, going into a tournament, I would very much consider playing Flareon. I like Flareon in B tier. I think it's a very underrated deck that I just don't see a lot of people talking about. It hasn't had that many good results in Japan. We didn't see it perform that well at the Champions League, none in top 16. But I really do like Flareon. This deck feels really strong. As long as nobody's playing Watchtower at high quantities, this deck feels like it's a broken deck. I love Flareon. And in my opinion, if there's a tournament, I would very much consider playing Flareon to a regional if there was one next week in the new format. Flareon, it looks like a really good deck, and I just don't know why people aren't playing it. I guess it might struggle more into the one-prizer decks, but, like, you can say the same for anything. Like, Diancie, like, how does this beat Alakazam the Psyduck in it? You know what I mean? So, that's just my opinion. All right, next up we have Mega Lucario. Now, Mega Lucario did look like for a while that it was going to be one of the best rotation decks. I think that Lucario is still very powerful, but I actually don't think the deck is as good as everybody made it out to be. There's two of them in the top 16 at Fukouka. My issue with Lucario, though, is that, well, I think that it is strong. It gets caught in the crossfire of the Psychic decks, like the Diancie deck, the Team Rocket deck even, or any deck that just uses Lily's Clefairy. A lot of decks are just playing Clefairy because it beats Dragapult, but also is really good against Mega Lucario. The deck definitely is very strong still. It does a lot of damage, takes easy knockouts, has a pretty good engine behind it with the help of Lunatone and Solrock, but I think that Lucario kind of falls in that category of just mediocre. I kind of want to put this in C tier. I understand why Lucario is a B tier deck, though. I understand that this maybe is B tier, but the deck has a lot of weaknesses. It's not a perfect deck, but it does have a lot of power behind it. It's probably the hardest hitting deck you can play right now in the format. But you have a tough matchup against Alakazam, you have a tough matchup against any deck that plays Clefairy. Even Dragapult itself is playing Lily's Clefairy, which is like a problem for this deck. So you see what I mean? Like, I kind of want to put the deck in C tier with Starmie, where I think the deck is just going to underperform, but it feels like it's going to be the beat stick deck of the format. Like, I kind of like Lucario in B tier, but for now I'm going to place it in C tier. The deck is good. I just think that it's underwhelming because of just how weak it is to Psychic. And, like, that Psychic weakness is really bad. And it's very much game-losing if you get KO'd by a Clefairy and your opponent takes half of their prize cards. You do have a lot of advantages still, like I said, but when so many decks can Oko you, and there's also Clefairy you have to worry about, it's, like, it's not the greatest deck ever. So, I don't know, like, B tier might be a little too kind. Like, I do think Lucario is just kind of a mid-deck at best. That's just my hot take. Next up, we have Grassbox. Venusaur is kind of cool. It does have a lot of things going for it. You have bulky mega Pokemon like Meganium and Venusaur. You have, like, free energy management. You get to play Teal Mask Ogerpon, which is a very good card right now because of how strong it is. You have Meganium Teal Mask combo. Venusaur might be worse than the Arboliva deck, though. This one's kind of up in the air. For now, I think I'll place Venusaur in the C tier. It's a deck that I want to be good, though. Like, this is a deck I would love to bring to a regional. We just have to kind of see the deck perform a little better first. Is it the best way to play Teal Mask? I don't know. For now, I think Venusaur belongs in C tier. I think that it's a cool deck. It's got some stuff going for it. It's thankfully a lot better than it is right now because a lot of its bad matchups are rotating. Like Gardevoir's rotating. I think you can probably beat Dragapult maybe. So for now, I'm going to place Venusaur in C tier. I do want this deck to work, though. And being a grass type is good right now. It's just whether or not it's the best way to play Teal Mask, right? Next up is Rocket's Hodgcrow. So this is another one-prizer deck that I have some pretty high hopes for. The whole Rocket engine is cool because you get built-in hand disruption with Archer. You get a lot of draw. You get Proton. Like, feels like it's a cool little deck. It did make a top 16 placement at Fukouka, so the results are there. It's been doing decent in the rotation anyways in, like, City League results. Could be a B tier deck. I think this is one of the better one-prizer decks. I don't think it's as good as Alakazam. But I think it's still solid. Obviously, Iono rotating is really good for the deck. You can't just lose to late-game hand disruption spam, because really the only hand disruption right now in the format is going to be the Unfair Stamp and the Judges. Judge probably won't be that bad for you. Yeah, I think Hodgcrow is pretty solid. I think B tier is a good place to put it. It's one of the better one-prizer decks for sure. I'd probably place it up there with Alakazam as one of the best one-prizer decks in the format. And we got Zoro next. This one is honestly really tough to rank. I think with all the Teal Mask popularity post-Fukouka. It's looking pretty grim for this deck. Raging Bolt, also not great. Zoroark does have some things going for it. It's a very consistent deck. It's got a good draw engine. You have Darmanitan, and you have some decent damage output thanks to Zekrom. And again, the Darmanitan, I think, does help a little bit, although Reversal Energy did rotate, which is really bad for you. Flame Body Cannon, Reversal Energy is a very good combo. If the Reversal Energy still existed for Zoroark, I actually think the deck would still be decent because you can at least counter some of these grass types with that combo. Sadly, though, that rotated, and Darmanitan is not as good as it once was. You have to rely on the first attack backdraft, which is a problem. So I think this one is a little weird. I honestly might call Zoroark a C-tier deck. Like, yes, Darmanitan is the best thing about... Like, I think Darmanitan is great for the deck. You have the ability to KO low HP Pokemon. You have some good damage output. But if Teal Mask is going to be popular, Raging Bolt being a big deck too, Alakazam being a popular deck, just not very good for the deck. I think the deck probably does fine into some of the other things, but you just kind of get smashed by the Oko decks and grass types being very popular. Like, I don't want to call Zoroark a D-tier deck. That feels a little too mean to it. It just doesn't feel like a good format for Zoroark, though. Like, despite having some cool tricks up your sleeve with some of the attackers you have access to, it doesn't feel like Zoroark has the tools to be as good as it was right now, sadly. Especially if we do see a lot of Teal Mask heavy decks, right? Like, Zoroark struggles a lot into Arboliva, struggles into Venusaur, struggles into probably the Mega Box deck with Teal Mask. Like, yeah, just not great. And then, again, those Oko decks like Raging Bull, Mega Lucario, probably not doing anything good for the deck. I will say, though, the one thing that saves Zoroark is at least you do have stuff like the ability to play Watchtower, maybe Judge, and Unfair Stamp, so you can at least counteract some of these Noctowl, the Dunsparce decks like Alakazam. But again, there might just be too much Oko in the format. There might be too much grass types in the format for this deck to actually succeed at a good level. Next up is another one-prizer deck, is the Okie Dogi Baracle deck. So Baracle has this ability where you can attach energy onto your, I think from your discard pile to your fighting Pokemon. It's a pretty good card, actually, for fighting decks. And one of the better access Pokemon you can play is going to be that Okie Dogi with good punch that does 170 damage if you have like a dark energy on it. The Okie Dogi is pretty solid, and I kind of like this deck in the C tier because I think that it's just not... It doesn't really take consistent one-shots. You do get a cool one-prize attacker with actually a good amount of HP because you can bring your Okie Dogi to 230 HP. You got a good energy acceleration engine. You get to play Soul Rock and Lunatone, which is not bad either. But the deck doesn't really have a lot of damage and power behind it, which I feel like is kind of a problem for the deck. Like, it's just a worse one-prizer deck than Alakazam and Hodgcrow, in my opinion. That's just my take on it. It's a cool deck. I like it. I don't even know... dude, is it a D? It could be our first D-tier deck, honestly. It might be. Like, it feels like a deck like this doesn't work that well in this format when you're much better off just playing a deck like Alakazam. Like, does this deck even beat Dragapult? Like, I don't even know if it does. You're not one-shotting the Dragapults, and if you're playing against Dragapult with, like, Crispins and Monkey Dories, which is now what they're playing, it's, like, really bad for you if you're just leaving damage on their board. Kind of not a fan of this deck. Yeah, I think it's probably D-tier. I think it's an underwhelming deck, unfortunately. Speaking of Dragapult, this is going to be the only deck I think we have in A-tier at the moment, and that is because Pult looks like the BDIF of the new format. In my opinion, actually, your deck just has to beat Dragapult going into this new format. Also, when Dragapult, when rotation comes overseas here, there's a very good chance Dragapult ends up just being the deck that sees the most play in any given tournament. The first major regional we have in the new format, probably we're going to see a Dragapult be the most played deck in the tournament. It is very much going to happen. Pult is looking very good right now, and I think your deck needs to beat it. I think the best way to play the deck is going to be Dragapult Dusknoir still. Yes, you do lose Counter Catcher and Iono and Halucha, which makes the deck a lot worse for sure, but the deck's power level and cheese potential is still very high. I feel like Dragapult just being this good is kind of the reason why we're seeing these like Oko decks become so popular. But I also think Pult being popular and this dominant, there's a good reason why people should look into playing Psychic-type decks, which is probably why we're going to see stuff like the Diancie deck, like the Team Rocket deck, have success. And why any deck that can splash in Clefairy in their deck also being really good. So yeah, Dragapult probably is the best deck in the format. I think it's definitely an A-tier deck. Next up is Dragapult Blaziken. This one is kind of weird. So Pult Blaziken is already like honestly not a bad deck right now in our current meta, but in the rotation format, it's had results, but it's kind of built a little differently. I'm not seeing it play like the same package that it does right now. I don't even see them playing the baby Blaziken, which is honestly kind of crazy. To me, Blaziken Dragapult is the Pultzard of rotation. It's another Dragapult deck that plays a Stage 2 Fire-esque type Pokemon with some energy acceleration involved with that said Fire type, and you get to play maybe an extra one prizer if you want to run the baby Blaziken in the deck, kind of like how you play a Chi-Yu in Pultzard. The deck is cool, but again, I feel like it's just a worse Pultzard, but it is the Pultzard of the format. Like, if there's going to be a Pultzard of the format, it's going to be Blaziken. I'm going to slam that in C tier. It might be just inherently worse than the other versions of the deck. Now, I will say one good thing about this deck, and actually one thing that might make the deck maybe better than C tier, maybe put in C tier is a little too harsh, and that is the fact that you do get a Fire-type attacker engine in your deck. So if you're playing against a deck that uses Teal Mask, like the Absol deck, like Raging Bolt, like Venusaur, like Arboliva, there's actually a good reason why this deck should actually see play. And honestly, now that I say that, I'm actually kind of leaning towards B tier now, just because, honestly, the Fire package does make a difference. It's like playing the Fire package right now, like the Chi-Yu and Pultzard is what gives you a fair matchup in a Goldengo. And with all these grass Teal Dance stuff running around in the format, maybe there's a good reason why this deck actually should succeed. And I mean, I'm somebody who has played a lot of Pulsar before. It's a favorite deck of mine. So, like, I don't know. Now I'm starting to reconsider putting this in B tier, because, like, a deck like this actually should work if we're going to see this much grass. To be honest, this might be B tier. Now, obviously, if you're playing against a grass deck, or if you're playing against a deck with Teal Mask, like, if you're playing against the Kang, Absol, Teal Mask deck, this deck probably, like, your opponent plays differently. They're not going to flood the board with Teal Masks. But if these grass types are probably, like, Arboliva seems like a free matchup. Like, Raging Bolt probably is favored. I don't know. Like, this deck might just be B tier. Because, like, you're just offsetting the spammage of grass decks right now by just having a Fire attacker in your deck. You can play the baby Blaziken, which I think is really solid in this deck if you can fit it. You don't have reversal energy with the baby Blaziken, but it's like the idea of that. Yeah, I don't know. This actually might be a B tier deck. Now that I think about it, like, having a Fire package in your Dragapult deck doesn't seem too bad. It might be the worst of the Dragapult decks. And then we have straight pull next, the Dusknoirless Dragapult deck, which did have a good result. I think it outperformed. Let me check here real quick. I think it outperformed the normal Dragapult Dusknoir deck at the fukouka Champions League. Just not playing any Dusknoir in the deck. Just played Triple Monkey, playing Crispin to build up the energy on your board, play Kangaskhan. But some lists will obviously just play like Monkey Dragapult, like straight pull we've seen before. And honestly, maybe they'll start playing stuff like the Genesect again. We see this build that got second or top 4 was playing a Lily Skulfari in the deck for like the Mirror and for the Lucario matchup. So this honestly could be an A tier deck. Like, I think Dragapult is just the strongest deck right now to play. Like, it's not a one-hit KO beat stick deck like most of the other decks in the format right now, but it does have maybe the most agency out of any deck, because you get Phantom Dive, you can make a lot of comebacks happen out of nowhere, which honestly not that many decks going in this new format have the ability to say they can make crazy comebacks happen out of nowhere, and Dragapult is the deck to do that. You can still win the game even if you're far behind. Not many decks right now, honestly, can say that they can do that, to be honest. It's a little sticky. Pult might just be the best agency deck in the upcoming meta, and I think if you're playing Pult, you either play Pult Dusknoir or Dragapult Munkidori with no Dusk. The Pult Blaziken deck, though, I still like the idea of that. I'm definitely experimenting that for sure going to the new format, because the Fire package might offset, again, those heavy grass decks in the meta right now. Next up, we have Raging Bolt, a deck that really surprised me. If you look at the Champions League fukouka here, it got top 4, and when I did my other video looking at the City League results, there was so much Raging Bolt, I was caught off guard by how popular this deck still was, and honestly how good it still looked. Like, I was just generally assuming this deck was going to die off, or you'd have to play, like, Belly Bolt or something to make it even playable. But no, the Teal Mask Bolt deck still lives. It's the best way to play the deck, apparently, and this deck looks pretty good. Oko potential, type coverage with the Teal Mask, you can play the Clefairy in the deck, so you get even better type coverage, although you're already running Dragapult over if you're playing Bellowing Thunder. But yeah, I mean, this deck, genuinely, it could be A tier. Like, it seems like another really powerful deck in our new format. The A tier might be a little too high for this deck. Honestly, maybe the only A tier deck might actually just be Dragapult, but I don't know, man. Raging Bolt's results have been pretty interesting to see. So, I don't know. Is this the best Teal Mask deck? It might be, because you have the Noctowls, you get the Oko option with Raging Bolt, where you can't kill with Teal, you just kill with Bolt instead. You can play Wellspring, you can play Clefairy, you can play the baby Raging Bolt, which is really cool too. I guess, like, it is going to struggle against stuff like Alakazam, obviously, is not a great matchup. Maybe Hodgcrow is a little tricky too, but even Bolt's playing Unfair Stamp, which is not bad. So, like, I don't know. This deck actually might be A tier. Bolt either is B or it's either top of B or high A tier. Maybe I'll put in B tier. I don't know. A tier might be a little too kind for the deck, but I don't know, man. Bolt looks pretty good right now in this format. Crazy to say that, because I thought the deck went extinct. Then we have Crussell. Yeah, Crussell's a solid C tier deck. Nobody's really respecting it. Obviously, you're gonna probably lose to the one prizer decks. Maybe you'll beat Alakazam if you play like 4 Mist Energy, but you're probably gonna struggle against other one prizer decks. And if any deck can play counters to Crussell, it's bad. Though Crussell doesn't have to worry about Gardevoir anymore, which is pretty good. That was like the one thing holding Crussell back was Gardevoir. Also, Mega Lopunny's play rate like is non-existent in the new format. I don't see anybody playing Lopunny anymore, which is also really good for the deck. Crussell, like, the more I think about it, though, the more I'm like, maybe this is B tier. Because, one, nobody's respecting it. Like, an army of Crussell should beat any deck that tries to counter you. Like, if you're playing the heavy Crussell count, you're just flat out beating any deck using Fan Rodon by just outpacing them. Like, Dusknoir is an issue, but you have Psyduck, right? You can play Psyduck in the deck. You have Mist Energy still. You can play the Articuno we saw in the top 16 list to counter Alakazam. So then Alakazam becomes favored. Like, at that point, you're probably just losing to Hodgcrow, and that's it. Genuinely, actually, Crussell might be B tier. I am heavily starting to consider this deck as a B tier deck. As long as you can stabilize and get out enough Crussells, you're probably just beating any deck that can counter you. Like, even Raging Bolt with the baby Raging Bolt that they'll play, you're still probably able to overrun them if you just set up enough Crussells. To be honest, yeah, Crussell actually looks like a B tier deck. Like, I'm going to be honest with you, this actually might be a B tier deck in our upcoming format. Just because its matchup against Guardy was so atrocious, but now the deck is gone, like, what's stopping this deck? Like, nobody's going to respect it. At least, like, the first rotation tournament, I don't think anyone's going to respect Crussell. Or at least if they do respect Crussell, it might not be enough to respect Crussell, if you know what I mean. So, might be B tier. Yeah, Crussell honestly looks pretty good. Next up is Team Rocket. So, we did see a couple in the top 16 here at Fukouka. One of the advantages of Team Rocket, it's got good type coverage. You got a Grass attacker, and you have a Psychic attacker, which is really, really good against all those, Pokemon weak to those two types. Team Rocket doesn't really change much with rotation. You get a nice, consistent built-in draw engine. You get some pretty good damage output with Mewtwo doing some high damage if you're playing Max Belt. I kind of like this deck as maybe a B tier pick. Like, maybe, like, there is some problems with it, but also with, like, Iona rotating, that's also really good for this deck. Iona was another thing this deck did not like to see. You got a good engine, good damage, good type coverage. Pretty all-around, well-rounded deck, in my opinion. So I think Team Rocket goes straight into B tier. I think, actually, this is probably better than Hodgcrow. I think I would rate this deck higher than Hodgcrow for sure. Because, like, Mewtwo and Spidops seem a little bit more consistent and stable than Hodgcrow. Because Hodgcrow still, you have to worry about losing resources. If you do get stamped sometimes, you might just lose the game because of it. So, I don't know. I think Mewtwo's probably a B tier deck. Like, seems pretty good in this upcoming format. Well-rounded deck for sure. Next up is Cynthia's Garchomp. Sadly, none of them made top 16 in the Fukouka Champions League, but I do really like Cynthia's Garchomp right now. Yeah, enough to even maybe place it in B tier, but I think I'm going to have to sadly place it in C tier just because there was so much grass-type dominance at the Champions League that maybe this deck needs to be kind of put away. It seems like Psychic and Grass are just the two best types to play right now. Though the one thing I will say about Garchomp, it does have a lot of HP, and honestly, it's got a lot of damage output. It's potentially better than Lucario because at least you have a good draw engine. You can actually make a one-price board still with Gabite and Roserade. It's actually probably better than Lucario in all honesty. So I might place Garchomp in C tier for now because I feel like it might get a bit weak just because we did see so much Teal Mask dominance. And if Teal Mask ends up being popular in this upcoming meta, then Garchomp isn't looking that great because there isn't really anything you can do about a weakness to grass in the Cynthia deck, right? Just kind of sucks you're weak to grass, right? Just feels like you just kind of get caught in the crossfire. So I think I'd still place it in like C tier, but it's a solid deck. Honestly, I think I'd rather play it over Mega Lucario. I would much rather play Garchomp over Mega Lucario any day of the week. It's definitely a better deck in my opinion, for sure. Next up, we got Grimmsnarl. So this one's also a little awkward. Sadly, I think Grimmsnarl might be C tier because, like, I think its time maybe just isn't very good anymore because, yeah, the idea of spreading all this damage on the board is still very powerful. The deck still gets to play Spike Mouth, which is really, really good. The problem with the deck is it gets blown up by all the one-hit KO decks, and that is not good for the deck. Like, you struggle a lot against Teal Mask. Obviously, all these grass types being popular, it's not looking too good for Grimmsnarl. And maybe it's just kind of like Zoroark, where there's a lot of cool things you can do with the deck. You have a lot of good damage spread. You just kind of lose a lot more worse to these Oko decks. Like, Mega Lucario seems like an atrocious matchup. Raging Bolt seems like an atrocious matchup. Arboliva, atrocious matchup. Mega Absol, atrocious matchup. Like, I think the only deck you're actually beating probably is Dragapult, and that's it. Yeah, you're beating Dragapult. That's pretty good. Beating Dragapult definitely is good. You're beating potentially the most played deck in the room. You're just getting collateraled so badly by these grass decks where, like, it doesn't feel very good. I guess, like, the question is, of the two dark decks that have fallen because of the grass type dominance, which one is better, Zoroark or Grimmsnarl? This one's tricky. I think if I was going to a regional, I'd still probably prefer to play Grim over Zoroark. Because at least Grimmsnarl can make comebacks still. Whereas, I mean, Zoroark still can, but that reversal energy doesn't... I don't know, man. The loss of reversal really sucks. So, I don't know. Grim's probably better than Zoroark, but definitely Grim... But actually, I guess my other question is it better than Starmie? Because I got Starmie in C tier too. Starmie honestly might be D tier. I might just put it in D tier, honestly, but... Yeah, I think Grim is better than Starmie for sure. I'm thinking about it more, like, if I'm putting Grim in C tier and Starmie in C tier, it makes no sense to have Starmie and Grim in the same tier. Like, Starmie's probably a D tier deck, sadly. Though, I think it's still good. I think anything in D tier is not bad, per se. It's just not as good as the other decks above it, or I just don't think it has a better chance of performing better than any of these other decks. So next up is Steven's Metagross. Man, I want this deck to be good. This is another deck that, if it ever was a playable and good deck, I would 100% bring it to a regional. I mean, the good thing it has going for it is that it does have some decent type coverage. It gets to play psychic types. You have some cool attackers to choose from. You can play Empoleon, which gives you like a free win against Alakazam. You can play the Skarmory. The new Mega Skarmory is really cool in the deck. I kind of like it. But the question is, does it keep up with Oko decks? Does it beat Raging Bolt? Does it beat Mega Lucario if people play that? Does it beat... I mean, does it even beat Dragapult, actually, is the other question. Like, does it even beat Dragapult to begin with? Maybe? I'll place it in C tier for now. This one definitely has me curious. I like it. In my opinion, Metagross looks like it could be a good deck. Next up, we have just like Frostlass Monkey not Grim, not Starmie, just like a normal Frostlass Monkey deck. I don't know where to rank this. There is a world where this deck is better than Starmie, and even honestly, even better than Grimmsnarl, because you're just using one prizers, which is a little bit better than using a two prizer that gets blown up by a grass type Pokemon. But I feel like the loss of Devo makes this deck a little bit worse, because you no longer have the ability to, like, Devo your opponent off the board. So I think you're going to struggle against Alakazam pretty badly, because they have Battle Cage. You do get to play Mega Frostlass, which I guess makes it not a one-prizer deck, but, like, you're not going to always use Mega Frostlass. I don't know, man. Part of me wants to place this in D tier. Part of me wants to put it in C tier. Like, I'm kind of torn between the two. I guess the next question is it better than Grimmsnarl? I don't know. Maybe. Seems okay. But I guess it's like, because you don't get collateral this bad against Teal Mask Ogerpon. Low-key, this is maybe C tier. For now, I'll place it in low C tier. This actually feels like probably better than Starmie, but I don't know. The deck's got something to it. Like, I feel like one prizers finally can make a home for themselves. Though, will this deck even beat Dragapult Dusknoir is actually the question. I don't know if it does. Like, Grimmsnarl definitely does beat Dragapult Dusknoir, where I think Frostlass Box still probably struggles against it. And yeah, maybe it's D tier. Because honestly, at the end of the day, if you're not at least putting up a good fight against Dragapult, like, why even playing the deck? Especially if it is the most played deck in the room. Slowking is next. I'll probably stick another weak one-prizer deck. Or not a weak one-prizer deck, but a one-prizer deck that just kind of feels like it's got a lot going for it. You have good damage output if you want to play like Conkeldurr or something. You also get to play Kieran, which is pretty cool. But a lot of decks right now are playing Shaman, and that is not great for the deck. Shaman is being popular right now, which is not great. Even Dragapult's playing Shaman, and one of the good things with Slowking is that it beats Dragapult if you just cure them really quickly. But if they're playing Shaman, you just kind of can't do that anymore, which is the problem. So Slowking might just be like a D-tierish deck. Like, it just might be a little too underpowered to be any better. Fessilied, I would probably place in the same group. Yeah, you get a lot of cool grass type attackers, and that's good. But outside of that, just Fessilied could be a little bit worse than something like Alakazam or Hodgcrow. Though, to be fair, Fessilied does have a really good engine behind it. So now that I think about it, this might be C tier. I'm going to place it in C tier. Now that I think of just because it does have the advantage of having Thwackey, which you literally get infinite, like you get quick search. You get multiple quick searches a turn. That's kind of broken. Now, you know what? Maybe this deck belongs in C tier. Not D tier. C tier. For sure. Maybe like lower C tier. Because like I'm not sold on the deck yet. But it's pretty good. This would be a lot better, by the way, if Teal Mask didn't have like such a good tournament. Because like if Teal Mask didn't pop off, these dark decks would still probably be kind of relevant, which would be good for the deck, obviously. But I feel like we're just going to see less and less dark decks now. Stuff like Grim and Zoroark's play rate is going to decline a little bit. Garchomp's going to decline a little bit. It's not great for this deck. Like the deck would be a little bit better if Teal Mask just wasn't so dominant and popular right now in our current format. I had Blaziken on here. I guess they're just kind of like a Blaziken Toolbox deck, not really Dragapult Blaziken. I mean, D tier, just play Dragapult Blaziken, I guess. I don't even know why that's on here. But then we got Box. So I did say that Flareon is a better deck, and I kind of stand by that. Box still has Wellspring, but again, Dragapult playing Shaman is not good for the deck. And Watchtower might still be out there. You do get to play Pikachu EX, which is kind of cool. I think it's just D tier. Like, I would rather just play Flareon. Flareon seems like a better deck because you get more energy acceleration, you get a lot better type coverage. You can play a Flareon Box deck, I guess. We've seen that before. But if we're talking like just strictly straight Box with like no Flareon stuff, I don't think it's that good. Like, it feels underwhelming at best. I think Flareon would just be a better deck, especially now that there's so many more grass types in the format. And finally, the Arboliva deck that got second place. I almost said one. The Arboliva deck that got second place at the Fukouka Champions League. Where do we rank this? Where this deck plays on the tier list? Is it a real deck, or is it a fluke that it did this well? Could it just be one of those things where nobody really predicted the onslaught of how good grass was for this tournament, and this deck just reigned supreme, or is the deck actually real? Well, here's my opinion. I think this deck is somewhere between B and C. The deck does have some cool things going for it. And debatably, it might be better than playing Venusaur, because Arboliva has a lot more like aggressive power behind it, which is actually really good. The deck isn't as clogged up as the Venusaur package, because you have to play an extra Stage 2 line, and I know you're playing extra Stage 2 with Arboliva, but Venusaur needs to work a little bit harder to work. It's also a 3-prizer, which at the end of the day is still not great, because if you get knocked out, you're giving up half the prizes. Where this deck, at least, your opponent still has to go through 3 2-prizers, which is a little bit more manageable. So I think it's better than playing Venusaur. But the question is, does it belong in B or C? It did get second place. It's honestly a pretty good result. Maybe belongs in B tier. Maybe the lower echelon of B tier. I would play places near the bottom of B tier. I don't think the deck is quite as amazing as maybe it looks to be. I've played a bit of the deck already on a YouTube video I posted, and the deck is not bad. Arboliva is a very cool attacker, especially if you pop off turn 2 with it. But, once again, could just be one of those Fraligator type situations. I think the Absol deck has a better chance of being a real deck than Arboliva, is basically what I'm trying to get at. But I think it is better than playing Venusaur. Although then you can make the argument, would it be better than just playing like Meganium Teal Mass without Arboliva and Venusaur? Just like a straight deck. Maybe still play like a Mega Meganium in there. You could play Genesect, which kind of does something similar to Arboliva. That's the other reason why Arboliva maybe is a bit weaker. Yeah, I'm like bouncing between B and C for this deck. Like, it does feel like kind of like in the middle of B and C. And maybe for now, slapping in C tier. I'm not sold on the deck yet. It also doesn't really seem very good against Alakazam. Dragapult might be shaky. I don't know. This deck's weird. I haven't given I don't know. I don't know where to rank this. This is B or C in my opinion. This is bottom of B, top of C tier is where I'd probably rank the Arboliva deck that we saw do well at Fukouka. But there you go. That is my rotation tier list. I think the best deck is just Dragapult. Dragapult probably belongs in A tier. It's a deck with the best comeback potential in a format where comeback potentials don't seem as good. It's got more agency than most decks, and Phantom Dive is still good. And I feel like actually the format is centered around Dragapult. That's why we're seeing all the psychic stuff do well. That's why we're seeing Oko decks perform very well. This is my opinion on where the meta is right now. If I was going to a tournament tomorrow in post-rotation, what would I play? I would probably go with Flareon first. I would look into Dragapult Blaziken, because the more I think about the deck, the more I like it. And honestly, like, Metagross seems pretty cool. Garchomp seems really cool. Garchomp doesn't seem that good right now. Just, again, the grass onslaught isn't very good for the deck. I think the deck just loses badly to these grass decks, which is not good. So, Garchomp probably doesn't seem in a great spot anymore. Going into Fukouka, it would be a deck I would very much consider playing. But honestly, post-Fukouka, I think Garchomp is not as good as it was. Garchomp would be a B-tier contender, by the way, if grass types didn't dominate Fukouka. But yeah, I'd probably either just play Flareon, Dragapult Blaziken, or I'd play maybe Steven or Garchomp if those two decks actually had some power behind them. If Metagross was actually real, I would definitely play it. It seems like a really cool archetype. I also love Metagross. I got a Metagross plushie right there, man. But yeah, Flareon, Dragapult Blaziken would probably be on the top of my 2 most played decks that I would consider bringing to a tournament. Let me know what actually you would play if there was a regional tomorrow in this format. What would you play? What decks would you play the most? I'm interested to hear in the comment section below. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like. Leave a link to the tier list if you want to go try it for yourself. Let me know your thought on my opinion on the meta. I'll do another one of these videos as we get closer to rotation. Definitely going to be doing that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.